Now
Okay.
you can start. Chidanandji, now you can start.
Just a moment. Good evening, Namaskar. We have yet another interesting topic this evening to apply our minds to, and that is comparison. Comparison, the perilous drift away from what is. We have discussed the significance of paying attention to what is, which means not getting hijacked by some ideas of what should be, how I could have been, how somebody would have been. All these would have been, could have been, should have been. There are so many conjectures. And we don't say they have absolutely no place in thinking, but when we are carried away by them, when they dominate our thinking, things get perilous, things get dangerous. Therefore, we are now trying to understand what is this drift away from what is. In self-inquiry, in understanding ourselves or life itself for that matter deeply, it is necessary that we remain with what is. What is the ground reality. My ego is hurt, or I feel insecure, or I am jealous, or I feel insulted. So one of these things could be the actuality, what is. Instead, we generally have a tendency, instead of noticing, hey, I am hurt, hey, I am jealous. Instead of noticing that, we spend a lot of energy thinking about why somebody said this about us, how somebody went way ahead of us and we are left behind, how somebody has become so popular while we don't receive attention anywhere, etc., etc. So what actually is going on in us is what is, and comparing ourselves with others or comparing others with ourselves and drawing some conclusions is what I am calling here the drift. Drift here is in the sense of being swayed away. Let's say a feather is floating in the air and we are watching it. It was going in a certain direction, and then we notice it is changing its direction a little by little, a little by little. Let's say it was going from south to north, and then it was getting drifted towards the east. So a deviation, and in the present context, an undesirable deviation, a digression, a distraction, a movement that we have ventured to call perilous, or a whole lot of our psychological misery is caused by this drift. We lack the quality of inner silence. We lack an ability to notice what is happening fundamentally, and our mind drifts away to 100 other things. I must hasten to add, being with what is doesn't have to be unduly restricted to self-observation. Being with what is a beautiful principle that applies to anything and everything, anybody and everybody. A child is crying, and if we examine, if we notice the child's crying, the child's sorrow, the child's agony, we notice the face of the child, we notice the physical movements of the child. We try to understand the child's sorrow as it is. Then that also, I would imagine, is a form of being with what is. Instead, imagine a child is crying, the child in front of me is crying, and I begin to think, this child of my brother is like that. My child would not have cried like this. And this child is crying, no surprise. This child's father also was like this only, whom I know from my childhood. So all kinds of associated thoughts, very many times carrying our own heavy conditionings. This child is crying because this child belongs to such and such community or family or all kinds of. You are not perceiving the sorrow of the child. You are not trying to perceive the essential ingredient of the child's crying or suffering, feeling miserable, but spinning theories about why this child is crying. So when we go to some theories, some fanciful theories, if I may say, deliberately exaggerating it, then it is a drift away from what is. However, this being with what is gathers more importance in self-knowing. It's against this backdrop that we are talking about comparison. Many a time, if you and I study some Krishnaji's teachings in his talks, through audios or videos, or in the printed books, wherever, or even in a discussion, somebody expresses some aspect of the teachings in a certain way, and we have not been very attentive, our own mind is wandering a lot. We pick up a word. Today they criticized comparison. Comparison has been called evil. Comparison has been labeled as bad. I should no more compare now. And imagine, next day you have to buy a washing machine, and your mind tends to compare the new washing machine that is available at a certain shop, where the salesman is telling you the features. This washing machine has this feature, that feature. And logically, you tend to compare it with the machine you already have. Oh, my present machine doesn't have this feature. The machine that presently I have does not have that feature. And this machine, which is now at the shop, which I plan to buy, has such and such feature. And part of our mind may say, last evening you were at the dialogue and it was said, don't compare, just to buy this. That would be very foolish. In buying a washing machine, in buying a car, in going for a number of physical things, going for some fresh food, some fresh vegetables, to wear some good dress, going for traveling, you are planning some travel. From Mumbai, you fly to Delhi, and then from Delhi, you take another flight to, let's say, Kolkata. Then you compare various options. These are all physical things. If you don't think that this option is better than that option, in one of the options, for example, Bombay to Delhi, and then the next flight, Delhi to Kolkata, have just a 60 minutes gap, then it has the risk of you are missing the next connecting flight. Whereas there's another option where 3 hours gap there is. You say this is better. So comparing in 1,000 things of physical life, which doesn't have to be about basic needs. You want to buy a piece of art to present it to your niece on her birthday. Piece of art, it's not something you eat or something you ride in, it's not something you wear. Piece of art is a thing of beauty. There also, comparison has a place. This painting is highly prized, but its colors, its whole creativity seems to be more. The other one seems to be not all that appealing with your knowledge. And you say, my niece likes reddish color. She has always opted for a little reddish, like my background here is red painted tiles. Many people said is a nice background. So I often sit with this background for online sessions. So my niece likes red color, and I don't know so much art, but between these two pieces of art which are for sale, the one which has a little bit of red in it, I'll buy. Comparison. All this is sensible. Then why are we criticizing comparison? And going by the title of this session, we are calling comparison a perilous drift away from what is. Obviously, the comparison being talked of here is in the psychological domain. And what under the sun is meant by psychological domain? To me, psychological domain is all about judging one's worth, judging one's value, judging one's worthiness. I am one of 3 sons of my mother, and the other 2 brothers are so rich, they often take my mother by flight all over the country and abroad also. I don't have that means. At the most, I can take my mother on a tour on 2-tier AC train, etc. Even that is physical. Now comes the psychological part. Please see the dividing line. That my 2 brothers can afford to take our mother by flight, maybe even business class, to London and back, but I find it difficult to take her even from Bangalore to Jammu and give her the pleasure of maybe visiting Vaishno Devi. I can't do that. That much is, though I made it a little dramatic, bringing a little psychological flavor to it, the factual part of it, what I can afford and what my rich brothers can afford, that comparison is physical. But now comes the next part. I slightly feel depressed. I feel that I have been a failure in life. And these two brothers, no matter how they got that wealth, through good means or bad means, nothing matters. But they are successful. They are smarter. Alas, where did I go wrong? Maybe all this philosophy made me derail in real life. In this way, the mind goes into labeling myself as unworthy and labeling the other two as worthy. You are on a slippery slope. We are on a slippery slope when, on the basis of money or some other factors, external factors, we judge the internal worth. In the well-known novel Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse or Hesse, you have those two young men. One man is fiction, but it somewhat brings in the real historical Buddha into the story, but it's a story. Siddhartha is a young man, and Govinda is another young man. Many of you, I trust, have read the novel by Hermann Hesse. Some of you may have seen the movie based on that novel, movie made by Shashi Kapoor, Simi Grewal. So you have Govinda walking the formal path, joining an ashram, wearing the monk's robes, and doing a lot of fasting or this or that, tapas, and he is respected in the society. Siddhartha also joins that ashram, but after a while leaves for whatever reason, goes to some city, does some business, even has a relation with a woman, goes and eats out, and in the eyes of the society, he is not much. That's a book, very thought provoking. Herman Hesse shows over there that how the society looks at Govinda, who is a venerable monk, and how the society looks at Siddhartha, who seems to have strayed, drifted, gone berserk, gone astray, etc. How the society values Govinda and Siddhartha is not the whole story. Herman Hesse shows with great dexterity that Siddhartha also learns, understands, and matures in his own way. And towards the end of the novel, it seems that the message is formal or informal. There is a certain learning. What is important is learning. Being in an ashram for many years, a person may not learn or may learn. Being outside and playing with life, experimenting with life, making mistakes at times, and so on, another person may learn and may blossom, may bloom, or may not bloom. The external conditions can be deceptive. So, coming to comparison in particular, I was saying that comparison is of two kinds. Like once more talking about buying, you want to buy a car, you have the Indian brand like Maruti, you have those other brands, Toyota, Hyundai, Honda, there are so many cars. Indian open market now has made available a wide range of things. If you have the money, there are many options. Krishnaji himself talks about comparing two cars, and then after comparing very systematically the price, the features, and other things, you decide to buy one of the two. That's one kind. That is physical. Then the second one is comparison between others and me. A notion, an idea of I am better than him, I am better than her, I am better off, I think I am happier. How do you know whether the other person is truly happy or in parties and get togethers puts up a plastic smile on his face? We don't know the psychological part. In this world, somebody wrote a book also, I think, games that people play. People play very many games. And as the traditional saying goes, God knows who is truly happy. Those who seem to be happy might be having a terrible agony in their bosom. And those who sometimes pull a long face could be actually quite happy in their life. But they pull a long face and we are nowhere, you have become big. They talk some such stuff. Anyway, we don't care. Let people play games. But we are interested in understanding how comparison can be perilous. When there is this thought, I am better than him, or she is better than me, which doesn't involve proper investigation, proper examination, not so much on the superficial level, money and other things, but more in terms of the psychological processes. Looking at money and as the next step, if we immediately jump to the conclusion, he has more money, I have less money, and therefore I have failed. Hold on. Does less money mean you have failed? Does less popularity mean you have failed? Does any such external thing have a one-to-one relation with failure or success? After all, what is your definition of failure? After all, why are you chasing success? Why do you want somebody's certificate for you having lived a right life and so on? So when we become aware of certain inner processes within us, those psychological processes, it's an amazing journey. You and I discover that many conclusions that we get into or we arrive at are such a long-standing conditioning. Maybe when we were in the primary school, our parents said, look at that girl, she always stands first in this maths and science, and you did not even come in the first five. Try hard. The parents compared you with that girl, maybe girl from the neighbor's house. I have heard once a father took his daughter to task. The daughter was some 18 years old or so. The father said, dear, listen, at your age, Indira Gandhi was student leader at Shanti Niketan. You are nowhere in your college. The daughter, of course, was nowhere, either in the college politics or academics or sports or other activities. But she was intelligent enough to ask another counter question to the father. Father, you are right. Indira Gandhi was a student leader in Shanti Niketan at this age, my age. But at your age, she became the Prime Minister of India, and where are you? The father did not expect such a counter question. But think of it. The father tried to poke his daughter, comparing her with Indira Gandhi, rather than understanding his daughter in terms of her mental makeup, in terms of her fears, her hesitations, her inhibitions, and her taste, what subject she likes, what activity she loves to get into. The father is not paying attention to all that. The father just sees some celebrity did this at this age, some other achieved this at this daughter's age. So apart from the joke, it has a rather sad truth, the evil of comparison, where because of such comparison, the daughter can get suffocated. The daughter may sink in certain self rejection. Oh, my father doesn't value me. My mother never cared for me anyhow. It seems that in this family, I am the one who is not wanted, not appreciated. Why should I strive anymore? My life has already gone for a tailspin, etc. She may be filled with, she may be overwhelmed with negative thoughts. That is where it is dangerous. We are ruining that daughter's life by commenting about her worthiness. So, in these discussions, we find comparison is closely related to what you and I often go through, jealousy, another negative emotion. If we are watching certain contradictions in ourselves, that is what is. I say one thing but do something else, and I notice it. I gently pay attention to it without a comment, without condemning myself, nor justifying the way I have been living. Suppose I notice, hey, there is a big gap between what I say and how I live. That noticing is being with what is. Instead of that, I get very jealous of somebody else who is actually living what I was proposing to. I have always talked about getting up early, and here is this sister of mine who doesn't talk about it but gets up very early. I get little jealous of her. And one morning at 5:45 or 6, I open my eyes and see her room. There is already light, and she seems to be already studying, this sister of mine. Whereas I feel, oh, this morning I wish to stay in bed for at least another 2 hours. Now, rather than trying to understand whatever it is, call it laziness, call it tiredness, it may be some medical problem, you never know what it is. Better you try to understand it. Don't compare with your sister. Your getting up late could be a medical problem, and for humor or seriously, her getting up at 3:30 a.m. could be a medical problem. Poor thing doesn't get sleep, whereas you get ample sleep. In some way, maybe you are fortunate. You are able to sleep any time of the day. Sometimes, to be able to get sleep anywhere, anytime is such a blessing. Anyway, let me not drift away to humor. Why do we very superficially see things? Oh, my sister gets up at 4:30. I find it so hard to get up even at 6 o'clock. Oh, and feel jealous about her and feel afraid of parents probably making a statement of comparison. Now, in the midst of all this, you will easily see seeds of violence are sown. Comparison sows seeds of violence. Comparison between two individuals in terms of their inner worth. Once more, it's not the wealth, but on the basis of wealth, one pats oneself as I am more successful, I am more worthy, I deserve to live on the earth. This other fellow is a burden on the earth and all this. Language is used in utter immaturity. So, violence between two families, between two countries, all kinds of things. Many people from India worked very hard and academic success or whatever, they went abroad. They joined companies in Silicon Valley or some university in Chicago. They may be in some Ivy League university on the east coast of America. They are professors. Now comes the next generation. Their son is not interested in academics. They want their son also to go to some prestigious university. They've already invested emotionally in that plan. And the son says, Dad, Mom, I want to take a break from studies. I want to just travel around the country. Don't worry about money. We will sleep somewhere. I and my girlfriend will sleep somewhere. We'll eat something. Don't worry about us. The parents are devastated. The parents say, Oh dear, my dear son, you know how I came to United States and how much I worked hard to become a professor of physics in Yale University. I don't know whether Yale has sciences, but or some, MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I'm a professor. And you don't want to study beyond 12th grade? Comparison. And many a father gets wild, screams, yells, brings the ceiling down, and the son is agitated. Son also feels miserable. And hopefully it ends there. For some places, it can lead to physical violence also. Therefore, without going long on this, dear friends, comparison is quite a complex psychological process. We should not jump to conclusion, oh, I am comparing. No, don't use that word comparison also. Keep an eye on whatever thought is doing. Don't hurriedly label it as comparison. Here is violence, here is jealousy, here is possessiveness, here is covetousness. We appreciate your vocabulary, but don't misuse your vocabulary to label the emotions rising in you. In a hurry, you don't have to label. You don't have to name this emotion rising in you. When you name the emotion, this is it, perhaps some injustice is done to it. Without labeling whatever is going on in you, can you notice it? And as there is a thought comparing others with yourself or other son with your son, the other professor's son has already got admission in Stanford and Yale and also what is that? Some Syracuse University. And my son, oh, how sad. So sometimes I compare myself with the other professor, not in terms of my own achievements or his achievements. I compare myself with that other professor who also has come from India and risen here. It's risen, whatever it means. I compare myself with the other professor in terms of how his son or daughter is performing and how my son or daughter is performing. Oops, it is really terrible. The psychological mess that comparison creates. Lastly, it is worth mentioning that in our immaturity, we read something a little bit, oh, yeah, I should not compare. I should understand my son. I should understand that professor's son. I should understand blah, blah, blah. Some words I have gathered. And then I say, so what should I do to free myself from comparison? This old disease. What should I do? Is there a technique? Is there a mantra? Maybe Kundalini Yoga On lower chakras, I compare probably. If the Kundalini goes to higher chakras, probably comparison evaporates. You begin creating some models of higher consciousness, lower consciousness, higher energies, and this evil called comparison melting away, evaporating, or again, there is a dysentery of words. That means words are just pouring out with no understanding. Therefore, it's not good to go on talking about comparison. I must stop here saying comparison without even using that word is something that we must notice in us and be aware of it carefully. That awareness may do something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Dinesh, you wanted to say something before Harshad Parekh?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, I should say that Chidanand Swamiji has really spoken very well and covered all the aspects. And I really feel, in comparison to him, very jealous in the moment, how good vocabulary he is having and all that. Anyway, today's topic is comparison. Let us see in a nutshell what JK has to say. Almost all points are covered by Swamiji, but let us see what JK has to say about comparison. JK says at psychological level, comparison is a form of competition. Can you live your life without comparison, except you compare with two cars or clothes, etc.? This Swamiji has also covered. So what he means, physical comparison is okay, but in psychological field, it creates problem. Why? Because it is based on the principle of reward and punishment. It is based on the principle of reward and punishment, which means if I do this, I will get that. At psychological level, this creates a form or part of violence, as Swamiji has also indicated. So at psychological level, this becomes a part of violence. When A is compared to B, who is more clever, bright, assertive, that very comparison destroy. When A is compared to B, who is more clever, bright, assertive, that very comparison destroys A. And so competition is a part of violence. So if one understands the depth of comparison, its full moment, then one will leave it. That's what he has to say. Living without a single moment of comparison means no past, no future, which really means one has to be free of all verbal restrictions and conditionings. One has to be free from all verbal restrictions and conditioning, to be free of the word. Now it is very interesting that he says further that to be free of the word, which is in essence comparative, means when we are discussing on comparison, we have to really see the fact. We are using words, we are thinking, and the very essence of it is comparative. Now here my views are, the roots of comparison are in duality and relativity. When we see the different things in nature, we are able to differentiate because of comparison. Here also comes the issue of choice. We choose based on our liking, desire, etc. And here the issue of quantity and quality comes into picture. So the psychology is very much involved in it. Moreover, comparison and competition also breeds progress or evolution. So if such is the fact, how to keep merits of comparison and competition and leave negative aspects of both, as said by JK, is a tremendous question. Here, one has also to keep in mind that this question goes further deeper to touch the intelligence of mankind. to touch the intentions of mankind. Does he want to see the cost and consequences of comparison and competition and change himself? Can he understand ultimately that one has to compete with himself only to flower? In my views, only if the humans rise themselves psychologically to the real wisdom level, then only this is possible. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Very nice.
Harshad Parekh, sir, please unmute and say.
Yes, are you able to hear my voice?
Yeah, we are able to hear, but we are not able to see you.
Yeah, because there is no electricity here right now.
Okay.
So we will have to just listen and not
Sir,
see much.
but current is
So-
in your voice.
Yeah. So when a child is born, the child brain is not developed yet, and the child doesn't have much sense of comparison. But as we grow older, then there is the association with the mother, with the father, then there is a comparison starts even before the language is learned. The child knows that this is my mother and she is not my mother. That kind of association and comparison exists in all human beings. And then as we grow older, we are compared in the family, like if a brother is very intelligent and you are not very intelligent, sometimes the family compares you. And even when you go to school, um, when a teacher is uh, teaching something and asking question to the whole class, some students who are very bright, they will immediately answer, and the students who are not very slow learner, they will compare. Even if the teacher doesn't compare, the comparison exists as long as the sense of I or me exists. And since this sense of I or me exists, comparison exists. And so we cannot avoid comparison. Uh, and whether you like it or not, the world will compare you with somebody else. And at that time, what is important is to understand ourselves, kind of a self-knowledge that what this comparison does to us. Like if I am compared with somebody who is more intelligent and I feel inferior, then that is damaging. And if I compare myself with somebody who is not as intelligent and I feel superior, that is also damaging. So comparison in the psychological sense, it creates a sense of superiority and inferiority. And I myself was comparing, when I went to America, I was comparing myself with Americans who were very tall and strong, and I was very weak physically. So, but only when we begin to understand ourselves and we are able to see clearly that this comparison, it creates problem. And we come to a different dimension of seeing clearly, not through thinking, what Krishnaji calls choiceless awareness. When that intelligence comes in our life, then there is no comparison. Then we can see exactly as we are, and in that there is no comparison and there are no superiority and inferiority. So the teachings of Krishnamurti is about understanding or seeing ourselves as we are, and without any should be. What we are is wonderful. There's only it becomes a problem when we compare with somebody else. So that intelligence, which can see ourselves as we are, then even if comparison comes, if somebody compares you with somebody who is more intelligent, it will not bother you, because then you know that yes, that person is more intelligent than you. And so seeing things as they are, that is intelligence, and that is why we are giving so much importance to learning about ourselves when we can see exactly what we are. And so finally, I would say that as long as this sense of I or me exists, there will be comparison. It cannot be avoided. But there is some dimension within us which can transcend this sense of ego. And that is the real purpose of philosophy or religious, spiritual exploration, is to come to that clarity in which we can see things as they are, and there is no should be. But again, uh, to be free from comparison is again a kind of a should be. If we say that we should be free from comparison, then that can also create conflict. But when comparison arises, and at that time there is this awareness that yes, comparison is going on, then that seeing is enough. It will lead to kind of a freedom from comparison, this seeing exactly what is happening. So this is not a goal. To be free from comparison is not a goal, but to see things as they are, and that is possible for human beings if they go very deep at the source from where thinking and feeling arises. And that is very, very interesting, very challenging. So I have said enough. Thank you very much. Now
Thank
I
you.
think Prasad ji wants to speak.
Chidanandji first and then Prasadji. Let Chidanandji make comment first and then Prasadji.
Yeah.
Yes, 7:50.
I would like to say that I think Dinesh ji made a mention of how a lot of progress happens thanks to comparison. All this progress, scientific, technological, as well as in history or economic study of history, economics and everything, there is no denying that comparison leads to a lot of progress. But again, much of that comparison essentially is in the physical context, not psychological domain. Many a time, these physical and psychological comparisons are both involved in a certain issue. For example, a scientist may see what some other scientist has found out, and on one hand, this first scientist appreciates what the second scientist has discovered and let everybody know. On the other, the first scientist may go through two processes simultaneously. One is the first scientist may say, but there is something more to it. I will find out now. I will examine this issue. I am going to study this, and who knows, I may find out something even you know, greater than what this scientist has found out. So far it is physical, so far it is not psychological, because one is paying attention to maybe that phenomenon or some machine that was developed and so on. But now, at the same time or a couple of minutes later, the scientist, after all, as a human being like all of us are, may feel a certain psychological process also emerging. I will show to everybody I am smarter than him. What he has found out will be nothing when I will discover something. So this I and my worth, my intelligence, and so on, and on the whole, people will value me more very soon than this fellow who is in the news today. That also may rise. So my summary remark is a whole lot of process is essentially due to the first comparison. That is, objectively something has been found out, and this scientist visualizes something more that can be done. There is no self involved in it. And sometimes the second part might act as a little bit of a catalyst with its own plus and minus. The second part, the personal jealousy or whatever, may prompt this man or lady to work quite hard. But that if that is the plus, the minus side of it is life's balance will be lost. When he is feeling sleepy, prompted by jealousy, he may say, "No, I won't sleep now. I will work a bit more hard and I will find out something whereby I will prove that I am smarter than that other guy." So that egoistic process, which is growing because of psychological comparison, might also provide some energy, but it is like coffee, tea, etc. Coffee, tea, and so on give us some stimulation, but most nutritionists and scientists agree that the little stimulation that coffee, tea, or even a cigarette and such things give to a human being doesn't last long. In fact, very soon there may be some bad effects of all these stimulations. Like that, psychological comparison probably sometimes for a short period acts as a catalyst towards working harder or whatever. But in the larger picture, psychological comparison is harmful and disturbs the balance or balanced living. That's what occurs to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Prasad sir, please
Sir,
unmute.
Sir, I wish Chidanandji is there to answer
I'm
me.
there very much. I'm hearing you.
Oh, thank you, sir. My only, I can't differ from your comments, but one small thing comes to me. The title of the talk is Comparison, a Perilous Drift from What Is.
Mhm. Yes.
Here, it appears as though comparison is the only perilous, is the only factor that makes you drift perilously from what is.
Mhm.
Whereas Chidanandji himself has quoted so many things,
Mhm.
like jealousy, envy, my God, so many things, which
Yeah.
he himself has quoted. You yourself have quoted.
Right.
And all of them are equally strong factors to make you drift from what is.
Right.
Supposing I am observing my wife,
Yeah.
I remember our past 60 years ago, which means I have drifted from what is. So memory itself becomes a big peril to make you drift from what is. Our job is to observe what is. We want to observe what is. But so many factors are there which drive you away from what is.
Correct.
That is the only small thing. And another thing, sir, like you have said and Parekhji has said, this comparison is there so long as your ego is there. Your individuality is there. I am an individual. I have to compete. Uh, uh, I have to enter into comparison with others. That sense of ego, that sense of individuality, so long as it is there, this comparison will definitely be there. The only thing is, the only curative factor possibly is a realization that you are part of humanity. That is the only realization that can remove this comparison or this perilous effect. Thank you, sir.
Beautiful, beautiful. We must remember we
You
are
wanted
part
to
of.
make any comment, Chidanandji?
Yeah, I only said that the last part was beautiful. The remembering how we are all part of humanity. All of us are basically human beings. Our mind, the egoistic mind tends to say, yeah, we are all humanity, but I am special. But we should remind ourselves that nobody is special, nobody is above, nobody is below. If something can happen to somebody else, it can jolly well happen to me too. If somebody puts his foot upon a banana skin and slips and falls, next day I could may do the same mistake or something similar. So that last part was very nice. And to the first part of Prasad Mulupuriji's comment, that there are many factors which are a perilous drift away from what is. Yes, I do admit in part, but from another angle of view, number one, they are all interrelated. They are related to comparison. And number two, we must examine whether comparison is at the root of all those jealousy and violence and competition and the desire, ambition, desire to uh, go faster than X or Y. All of them seem to arise from the process of comparison. So maybe comparison is a fundamental factor probably that can be examined. But they are definitely interrelated. None of them is isolated process. I think Harshadji wants to say something.
Yes. Are you able to hear my voice?
Very well,
Yes.
and we are able to see you very clearly now.
Yes. Okay. So this comparison exists because there is a sense of me and not me. That is at the root. And that we can see even in animals, like two dogs, they are competing or comparing. If you are feeding, giving more importance to one dog, then the other dog feels jealous. So there is a kind of a comparison exists. Even when I was in Rajghat school, two peacocks, they were very good friends. Always they were going together, but one peacock got injured because of the thread during the kite festival, and that everybody was giving more importance to that peacock who was injured. Then the other peacock became violent to this peacock. So that sense of me, I am more important than others, that leads to all this problem, comparison, jealousy, and violence. So all that exists. So at the root is this sense of me or I, which is different. So there is a duality, and this duality, whenever there is a duality, there is a conflict. So the problem is very, very deep, right at the source of thinking we have to go. And that one can go only when a person is free from thinking. That means can see how the whole thing is arising in our mind, how the thoughts arises, and out of that is sense of I or me arising, and then there is a not me, and then there is a comparison. So at the root of comparison is this duality between me and not me, in a psychological sense. Okay, I finished.
Harishji, please. Harishji first and then Waghmare. Harishji, please.
Please, may turn your mic on. Oh.
Okay, namaskar to everyone and Swamiji. First of all, I was just wondering about different aspects of comparison. Comparison breeds not only resentment, sadness, frustration, envy, jealousy. It may breed the opposite also. So when I compare myself with others, and if I'm the class topper, so I'm comparing, and then I feel proud. I suppose there must be somebody right at this moment who is the so-called richest person in the world. If he or she compares, he may find that he is the richest person, and it may add to his pride, arrogance, and things like that. So both these possibilities are there, and I hardly need to say both are destructive. Feeling jealous, envious, frustrated is also dissipation of energy, and feeling proud is also is a dissipation of energy, and spiritually it is suicidal. That is one thing. Second thing is, if I don't compare, why I don't compare, one has to find out. Swamiji said, Swamiji threw enough light on what is, and again, what is also has two aspects: what I am, and also what the world is. Krishnaji emphasized a lot observing, and Krishnaji was never tired of saying, I never passed a single examination, but I observed the world as it was. I observed people, how they relate with each other, how they behave, their arrogance, their pride, all that. So whether I compare myself with anybody or not, I must be aware of what is. And when I become aware of what is, which includes the world, I realize that the world has inequality. I realize that all cannot be equal. I think that keenness of observation brings its own wisdom in its wake. And that wisdom probably helps me to see that, yes, okay, I'm the class topper, but so-and-so is taller than me, fairer than me. He sings better than me. He is sought after by girls, whereas I am not sought after by girls. So what I mean is that this inequality in the world around, observation of that makes us slightly humbler, and we take this inequality, what is in me, what is not in me, as facts, not to either feel proud about it or not to resent it, not to lament it. So I see it as a fact. That is one thing. Second thing, suppose I don't compare. Why don't I compare? Because I have seen herders and shepherds in the villages. They are happy, contented with grazing animals. They never compare themselves. They are happy with two meals a day and all that. Not necessarily they, but maybe I don't compare because I am a cabbage. But to use a Krishnji word, I don't have that passion. So I am happy with anything. I may be a thick person. You praise me, nothing happens to me, and you insult me, nothing happens to me. That means I am a cabbage. But I am not passing a judgment, whether about myself or whether about others. But one has to find out. So ultimately, I am the one who has to keep watching myself. I cannot say anything about as long as the me consciousness, the self consciousness, the egocentric structure and all that is there. Comparison will always be there, because I am not at all aware of the other side, a dimension where there is no self. So I have no moral right to talk about that. But yes, this is how I see things. Thank you very much.
Dinesh Waghmare.
Swamiji,
Yes,
I am having a question.
sure, go ahead.
We talk of so much about the psychological domain and physical domain.
Yeah,
Who is at the driving seat, whether psychology or technological development issue? Because unless psychology is in the driving seat, we will not go for any development or for any comparison or say competition or anything.
yeah. So scientific development can take place out of love of subject, love of nature, love or passion about observing some phenomenon. When James Watt observed the lid of a vessel where water was boiling, the lid was moving up and down. Perhaps there was no ego in him, no psychology in operation, but the intelligence in him was perceiving something objective, and the intelligence in him, in his brain, wondered why the lid was jumping. There must be a lot of energy. And then just his history, he invented the steam engine. Every one of us does a lot of observing in our daily life where there is no psychological dimension. Because psychological dimension necessarily is not just any mental process is not psychological. Psychological process is something to do with the I, me, the self, and especially judgment. I am a failure, my brother is such a success, or I am not handsome, my brother is so handsome, and so on. So some kind of evaluation comes and either depresses us or makes us feel proud. That is psychology. If I stand before a mirror and say I am 5 feet 4 inches, my brother is 5 feet 8 inches, but it doesn't matter even a wee bit. Let him be 6 feet. Who cares? We are equally lovable. We are equally loving, and so on. Suppose there is no comparison. I acknowledge just the fact. I am only 5 feet 4 inches. My brother is 5 feet 8 inches. Let the society admire him. I am happy for it. In this way, then there is no psychology. So a lot of scientific progress can take place out of the operation of intelligence without the self, without comparison of that kind, but only factual comparison. Factual comparison is not a problem. The comparison leading to evaluation, causing depression or elation. That is the problem. That is the comparison we are calling a perilous shift or drift away from what is.
Sir, it
Means
is
you
all,
mean to say,
you have
can I
to
continue, sir?
7:15 it is, you have to leave, sir.
I'll leave
I'm
in
just,
2 or 3 minutes.
okay, sir, it's fine.
What we mean to say is this is going beyond pain and pleasure principle. Psychology,
No,
when we
this
say scientific development only.
actually the pain and pleasure also are of two kinds. Suppose somebody slaps me, there is definitely a pain in on my cheek. And I look at who slapped me and I find it is my own beloved friend. Then there is no egoistic disturbance. I smile at him or her. My, why did you slap me? Meanwhile, there is a lot of burning sensation here. Whereas the psychological issue may come up sometimes. Somebody slapped me, and that's because of a difference of opinion, and some others laughed when he slapped me, and my ego is hurt. Even if he slapped, why did he have to slap in front of these people, etc.? The mind goes into a frenzy. Therefore, the I, me, and my has to be very carefully discerned or identified, the self-worth and so on. I put my foot on a banana skin and fall. There could be just physical pain, or there could be psychological suffering if I feel, my God, somebody took a photograph also, and tomorrow they may put it on the nowadays Facebook and such things. And even that is not by itself a problem. There are some people who say, "Well, I get popularity without any cost. Haha, happy." There is then no, insult. So where we get insulted, where we get depressed, where we shrink, we feel we have been fools and so on. There the psychological operation comes in.
May I make a comment?
Please do.
Yes. America developed atom bomb because they thought that Germany would be the first to make the atom bomb. And then that whole race of making more and more dangerous nuclear weapons started. So because of this comparison, it leads to a lot of destruction even in the world of science. And as long as we don't understand our a human being may be possible to be free from comparison, but the impact of comparison will always exist in the world, and whether you like it or not, you will be compared with others. And if you don't understand yourself, you will get hurt, or you will become very proud, or you begin to develop inferiority. So the whole, our search is to come to some clarity about what we are, and not be free from comparison. So comparison will exist in the world because there is a lot of differences exist. Some people are tall and some are short and some are dark and skin colors. So there is a variety of things which will, when we think about all this, it will lead to comparison. And that comparison can be seen as it is and not create any problem, or that comparison can create problem for us. So our main interest is to be free from the impact of comparison. Comparison will not end. Comparison will exist, but it is possible not to get hurt or feel damage our body and brain by this comparison. Okay, I finish.
Waghmare, you wanted to say something on this?
No, sir. Thank you. Thank you for.
Thank you very much. That's a great pleasure to know. You did not comment on it. Anyone more wanted to say something, or should I end it here?
I will tell a little bit about Rishi Valley when Krishnaji was coming, and he was talking with students about this problem of comparison, fear with student. And at one time when Krishnaji was talking about comparison, one little boy who was sitting in front of Krishnaji, and he said, "Sir, the world cannot go on without comparison." So Krishnaji said, "Why do you say that?" And the boy said that suppose you want to marry and there are 5 girls, you have to compare. So everybody started laughing but Krishnaji was not laughing. And he said, "Look what you have done to this little boy. At this age, he has started comparison." But I think comparison will exist as long as we are thinking and we have the sense of I and me. It will exist, but whether we can go beyond this I or me and come to that intelligence which can see the beginning of I, which is creating problem, then that seeing, that direct perception, insight, intelligence, it doesn't do any damage to our system. And that is probably the teachings are, all spiritual teachings are about coming to the sense of freedom from the problems which we create because we don't understand ourselves. Okay, I finished.
And thank you very much. Should I end it here, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you. Modak, please end it now.
Okay.
Let us